Robert Breedlove, welcome to Bedford. How are you?
Glad to be back, Peter. Thanks for having me.
How's the head?
Head's doing pretty good.
We should TLDR what we just spoke about without the record button on.
Yeah, so I'm a guy that doesn't drink. You took me out drinking last night, and then you woke me up early for a podcast. So hope this goes well.
And I took you for a lovely steak and got you up early and forgot to press record on the mics because I'm an amateur. I'm just going to tell people what I told you off mic. Fuck. So we'll just circle back. The dinner we went for was very well priced. We had 2 tomahawks, a couple of ribeyes, and lobster. I'm telling you, if you have that in any other major city, you're paying double what we paid. And it was one of the reasons to put on the conference here in Bedford, cheat code, that we're going to get you into now. In that, what we wanted to do was ensure we're in a place it wasn't overly well, there's 2 things actually. Look, you can do it in London, and hotels are expensive, and conference venues are expensive, but also it's good for the local economy here. Mm-hmm. Places like Bedford need a thing, right? Mm-hmm. They need a leg up, so that's why we're putting it here. So that's done. Let's get back to ARC. You did the ARC conference.
Yeah, so I'm in London. Well, now I'm in Bedford, but I was in London before this for the ARC conference, which is Jordan Peterson's Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And the purpose of that organization is to be like the anti-World Economic Forum.
Okay.
So trying to give people a news story that's a counter to the globalist, utopian, nihilist, sacrifice everything to global warming cult. And I did some interviews there. So I did 5 interviews with speakers that were speaking at the event. Those went really well. And then I spoke on the last day on a panel titled The Future of Money. And the core message I was trying to deliver, because one of ARC's central pillars is free markets. They have all these different pillars to their organization. One of them is free markets. And I was like, look, guys, you've talked a lot about free markets and the importance of good governance and things like this, but no one's addressed the elephant in the room, which is the central planning of money, right? If money's 1/2 of every transaction, and you had a totally unhampered market in every space, but you had a central bank, then you're a 50% free market at best. So it was a bit of a radical message. A lot of people came up to me after and said they really appreciated it. But I think the crowd was, a little bit older, a little bit stodgy, so it might have been a message a bit too radical for a lot of them to absorb.
It is a weird one in that there is a lot of voices similar to Jordan Peterson's. There's a lot of anti-woke, anti-nonsense. Yeah. I even find anti-woke difficult, but just like anti-nonsense. I think who's that Canadian politician? Pierre Poilievre? Yeah, he said, you saw him do the interview with the apple?
No.
Oh my God, you got to see this video. I got to show it. This guy's asking him questions. He's eating an apple and going, "What do you want about?" Because this guy's saying, "You're taking pages out of Trump's playbook." He's like, "Which page?" Chewing on the apple. But he said, I just want to bring common sense back to politics. And I think I'm in agreement. I think one of the biggest problems I've had with this whole anti-woke movement thing, I don't think they're good at branding themselves. I don't think they're good at marketing themselves. I think sometimes they come across as like crazy nutters when they don't have to.
The anti-woke.
Yeah. As much as the woke.
Okay.
I sometimes feel like they're two opposing forces sometimes, and some of them are they're both kind of screaming their point. And I just think sometimes, the branding and marketing of what you're trying to do just could be so much better.
Yeah.
There's a branding and marketing.
Yeah, I don't know that there is. I mean, there's no centrally coordinated branding or marketing, right? This is just a cultural divide. I do think, though, that the market is speaking against wokeism, right? Like we saw what happened with Bud Light.
Yep.
Now they're sponsoring, I think they're doing a $100 million sponsorship with UFC to try and fix that.
That's literally extreme to extreme.
Exactly. Well, they got a zag, right? They zigged too far, so now they got a zag. I mean, the woke stuff, look, it is fucking nonsense. Let's be real. And there's a great video. Oh man, I posted it on Twitter. James, and I forget his last name. He's a Tennessee guy, and he basically says wokeism is cultural Marxism rebranded to take out the West, and he really breaks it down. And I think the punchline would be when we start talking about these definitions, right? Oh, a man is not a man is whatever you say. This, like, you're attacking the root of rationality, which is our social consensus on words, right? The meaning of them. And it doesn't matter what you call yourself. Like, you have certain chromosomes. You can call yourself a man, a woman, a flagpole. It doesn't matter. Biology doesn't give a shit. And so that's like very foundational to human rationality. And that's why I think wokeism is being funded. It's sponsored by the state, right? You can see who the biggest funders are. U.S. government funds a lot of it. A lot of European countries fund a lot of it. And I think it's another insertion of cultural Marxism, trying to get
1984.
people. I think it's a divide and conquer. It's a divide and conquer strategy. You get people divided amongst themselves and arguing with one another, and then all of a sudden you create this demand for more rule of law. So there's an excuse to just have stronger governance.
But do you think it's malice and planned as malice, or do you just think it's organic in nature because of the way politics works?
No, it's state funded.
Yeah, but do you think the state funds it? Because what I struggle with is the idea that a group of people sit around a table and say, do you know what we need to do? We need to fund this, because if we fund this, then we can like implement new laws. I think it's just more organic. I think it's the way politics works, the cycle of politics, the way people latch onto things to try and win votes. I think it's organic, and it's a broken organic design.
So do you think Marxism was organic?
No, I think that was an idea. And it was a flawed idea.
Yeah, I think this is the same thing, basically. So there's always these romantic lies being told as an excuse to steal people's shit. I think Weinstein has this quote, right? The idealism of every age is the cover story for its greatest theft. So like ancient Egypt, the pharaoh is a god. You are a subject. Go build the pyramid, right? It's telling a lie. The pharaoh's not actually a god. You're not actually a subject. Go, let me steal your labor by building my pyramid.
We got some cool fucking pyramids out of there, though.
Cool pyramids. Marxism, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Total bullshit.
Yep.
Like, it's a romantic lie. It sounds nice, but obviously doesn't work at all. It's like whose needs? How do you quantify that? How do you quantify someone's abilities? Who determines how much someone needs versus what someone's abilities are? There's no incentive to produce, right? And so it's a utopian vision, but it's actually designed to steal your shit, right? And so this, if you look at like the pandemic, we had nobody is safe until everybody is safe, right? Now, this isn't wokeism per se, this is pandemic, but that's also a lie. That doesn't make any sense. How can no individual be safe until every individual is safe? And then who quantifies the safety? It's just a lie, right? To print umpteen $1 trillion worldwide and steal people's shit. So,
but that's where I struggle with. Not that I disagree with, and I got a lot of shit wrong during COVID, certainly. Where is the plan coming from? Like, who sat there making a plan that
all
says,
I say is central bank shareholders, and people are always trying to get me to like name them individually. I actually don't know. Like, there's rumors about what families own the central banks, and you can read these books about certain named families. But I don't really know. Like,
yeah, because I can rationally plot it out as how it happens organically. I can. It's easy to do, right? You see a virus appears in China. I don't know the background to that. I don't know. Someone might say, no, this was the Chinese government's plan. I don't know. Anyway, this virus appears, and we know people are dying. And then the first place it really attacks is in Italy, and it was very serious when it first hit Italy. There was a very good BBC News report. They showed what was happening in the hospitals. They showed people were coming into the hospitals and they were dying. And so there was a thing. Like, we can't pretend there wasn't a virus that was killing people. They just didn't know how to deal with it at first. And then so my friend's a doctor. I interviewed him. The interview's still out there. It was right at the start of COVID. And he said to me, to be honest, his journey through COVID is what I think COVID was because he explained to me at the hospital, he said, we had a couple of people come in, and then we had a trickle, and then we had to declare an emergency because we did not have the staff to deal with it. And then they were trying to deal with the people coming in who were sick, and they didn't know what they were dealing with. They didn't know if they were going to get sick. Doctors were getting sick and dying. Nurses were dying. All this happened. He's in tears on my show. But over time, became to understand COVID. It wasn't as bad as we thought. It only affected certain people, and it became something that they can manage. Right? That's his arc. I think is what the arc of COVID was. I think the reactions to it were the extreme, but I think it's organic. I think governments were like, "Shit, this is happening. We have to do something," and so they all reacted. And the way they reacted was, well, let's lock people down. And now we've locked people down. There's no money. We have to print it. But I struggle with the idea that somebody went, we've got this COVID. Now we can use this strategically. I think the outcome's the same. I think your outcome, my outcome's the same. I just think we get there in a different way.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you're struggling with that.
Well, it's like organic, inorganic. I would say the virus itself was engineered. I think there's a lot of evidence for that. Even just having it. You had COVID, right?
Twice.
Yeah. So for me, and I had very unusual symptoms, right? I was just basically tired for a week. I would cough like once every hour. So basically I had no cough and had body aches. Other people I knew were losing their sense of smell. Some people lose their sense of taste. Some people have nonstop coughing, right? So I've never seen a sickness where so many different people have so many different symptoms. And just my own, obviously this is anecdotal, I can't prove it, but it felt like a fake engineered something, right? I've had a lot of different sicknesses. They're usually, the symptoms kind of match what other people have, but this was such a weird pattern.
Well, I think
so. When we're saying organic versus inorganic, like I would say the origin of it is inorganic. It's engineered. The crisis itself, though, obviously there's an organic element to it. Governments are responding locally and globally, but I think there has been, what is it, the old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? There was a lot of opportunism,
of course,
once it happened, that many central governments took advantage of to pass things, to print money and pass other laws that are totally antithetical to Western society.
And they don't walk back those new laws.
No, it's always that encroachment until people resist, and then you take a step back, wait, encroach further, step back, wait.
But I still stand by. Well, firstly, I don't know if the virus is engineered. What I did notice is with each wave and each variant, people had the same symptoms. So the first time I had it was awful. I know I had it, but I couldn't get tested because it was so early on that they were only testing people who'd been to China or Italy. I'd come back from a refugee camp in Turkey, came through the airports, and it was right at the time the lockdown started. I was really sick. I definitely had it. Everything ached. And then I had it twice when I was through the little COVID tests. The second time I had it, my daughter had it, we had exactly the same symptoms. We both had the sore throat. And so I can see a scenario where the variants change what the symptoms are you have.
See, in my household, we had 3 people, 3 different symptom sets.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Either. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't change. I guess it doesn't change what we're trying to discuss here is what the impact has been. Yeah. Because if whether it's engineered or not, it doesn't change the impact. What I think is COVID, no COVID, war, no war. Governments like to create laws. Governments cannot manage a budget like we manage a household budget, and they will print more money. And as they print more money and they erode the middle class and they create a bigger wealth gap, they have to create more laws to keep people in check. But I think I think it can be designed. I think it can be evil when people sat in the room. I certainly think more communist or dictator states, tyrannical states do that. But I think under a democracy, I just think it's very poor governance.
Yeah, well, again, so this is why I asked about Marxism, because Marxism was clearly intentional, right? It was, and who knows? Did Marx believe what he was saying or not? I don't know. But either way, it was a lie, even if it was a self-deception. There is no such thing as from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. And then Marx himself said that you could summarize Marxism in one sentence, which was the abolition of private property.
Yes.
Steal everyone's shit, right? The state owns everything, you own nothing, and you'll be happy. So we've had this like sequence across human history of these big romantic lies being told, as Weinstein put it, as cover stories for the greatest theft. And so I think it's just another one of those. And again, this back to human rationality, it's like, this is the human superpower, that we can run cognitive software like the English language, open source software, and we can sit here and communicate. if you start attacking the code itself, right, and we can't agree on definitions, and you break social consensus, then you get society divided amongst itself. People are arguing over the definition of fucking man and woman. And when you have people distracted and pouring their antagonistic energy against one another, not directing it at the source, which is the systematic violation of private property via taxation and inflation, the stealing of the shit, then all of a sudden you have carte blanche to pass even more laws to steal even more shit, print more money, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there is a hijacking of human rationality occurring. I don't know if it's like one small room of guys sitting around with cigars saying, let's do this, but there's definitely families and factions that are profiting from stealing from people systematically, and it would serve them to propagate false narratives to cover up that theft.
There's a really good video that I should dig out and send to you if you haven't seen it. I think it was made in like late 80s, maybe early 90s. This Russian guy was talking about how...
Oh, yeah.
You know the one I mean?
Yeah.
We talked about
how Marxism would propagate through the universities and such.
And he predicted everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting anyway, Robert, is whether or not we agree on how we get there. We both see the impact. We both disagree with it. So I think in some ways, like the more important question is, how do you break it? How do you change things? Because, we have it now in the UK.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Everything's getting expensive.
Yeah.
People are struggling. We had a reported 18% increase in people falling behind on their mortgage payments. So we're going to have people defaulting on their mortgages. They're going to lose their homes.
Yeah.
The homes will end up being owned by the banks. The banks will sell them off so they can recover their incomes. Those houses will get sold off to the people who've got the capital. So that will increase the wealth gap. There will be less. The home ownership will be consolidated into the hands of the wealthy. We know that's going to happen. We know more taxation is coming, but the higher taxation is really subtle. They know they can't raise income tax any more than it is. So they've raised corporation tax. And then there's new kind of, there was, Connor, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Connor, you went to the pharmacy to collect something and they got rid of, what was it they got rid of?
They've added a tax to all items that are prescribed.
So prescriptions that used to be free, there's now added tax. So they're having to find little subtle places to put it because they can't raise income. And they're borrowing ever increasing amounts of money because they've not got enough money even so. And it pisses me off because I always come back to this point. I own a house. I pay a mortgage. If I want to borrow money, I have to pay it back. If I don't pay it back, I lose my shit.
Right.
But government doesn't have that rule.
That's right.
And so we can all see what's happening. But what is the answer? Are we all going to sit around all day talking about this? Or are we going to actually get out there and make change?
Yeah, so this is one thing they talked about at ARC too, that Marxism is making its long march through the social institutions of the West, which is what the Russian guy in that video predicted 20, 30 years ago. And so again, if everything looks like a nail to a hammer, right? So I'm looking at this through the lens of money and property. I really think this is the basis and purpose of civilization, right? The fact that you can go out and create something of value and you have the exclusive rights to it, right? You can sell it, you can keep it, you can benefit from it, you can exclude others from it. If Marxism is the abolition of that, right? The abolition of private property, which is justice, right? People getting what they deserve, property is people keeping what they earn. So property is justice, like in a philosophical sense. At the same time that Marxism is making its long march through the social institutions of the West, it parallels the escalating violation of private property. So you could call, this is central banking, right? Central banking is monetary Marxism. I've said this a million times, but Marx's 1848 Manifesto to the Communist Party, measure number 5 reads, a central state monopoly on cash and credit and a national bank. So is it any coincidence that the same time monetary Marxism is accelerating, cultural Marxism is accelerating, and social institutions in the West are disintegrating, right? These things are all connected, like the theft, the stealing, and the lying, the hacking or hijacking of human rationality to distract people from the reality that their labor is being stolen through taxation and inflation. I just don't think these things can be a coincidence. And so your question is, what's the answer? I try to look at it in like a systems perspective. It's like human beings are basically our individual character, our path of moral development, the decisions we make, how we interact with one another. A lot of these things are driven by economic incentives, right? This is, again, maybe we'll talk about slavery later, but the purpose of slavery is to steal their labor. You're not just trying to put someone in bondage for fun of it, right?
We doing Texas slavery again.
We might.
Do you pay tax?
So to finish the thought there, it's like if labor is being confiscated and then the purchasing power is being stolen via inflation or taxation, that those proceeds are being used to fund mainstream media narratives, false narratives, all this bullshit, wokeism, et cetera. What's the answer? Well, make property harder to violate, right? And it's a new incentive system. If human nature is like water, takes the shape of its container kind of thing, pour us into a new container. And this is where Bitcoin is so fucking important, because I think it's the closest thing to inviolable private property we've ever had. So if you have a world running on a Bitcoin standard and the state can't print money, well, you've taken away at least half of their revenue source, right? The U.S., what was the U.S. in like 2020? I think they collected $4 trillion in taxes and printed $4 trillion. I might be off on the numbers. Basically a 50-50 mix,
Yes.
50% taxation, 50% inflation.
Yes.
So a Bitcoinized world, 50% of U.S. government revenues go away. And now people are holding savings in an asset that's hyper-portable, easily concealable. So if they get oppressively taxed, they can change jurisdiction much more easily. They can circumvent capital controls, et cetera.
It's not that easy, though.
Well, it's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier. Ask someone in China, right? It's $50,000 US per year you can take out of China on fiat rails. You can do a lot more than that with Bitcoin. So the point is, Bitcoin gets you to a world of more localism, right? It's shrinking the state. It's making governance more local again, less centralized and large. So presumably you would have less proceeds to fund these bullshit false narratives. You'd have less of the systemic lying, less of the systemic stealing. And this would be just a more peaceful and prosperous world. And so it's a radical idea, but the way I look at it is basically we are emergent properties of the incentive structures that we inhabit. Fiat is a very bad incentive structure, right? It's let me get as close to the money printer as possible by, realpolitik, arbitrage, deception, whatever it takes for me to get my business too big to fail or become a politician that's near the money printer or be a shareholder of a central bank. When that incentive goes away and you can only earn wealth by creating value for other people, right? Solving problems for customers in the marketplace.
Crazy thoughts.
It's rational. It's rational.
As a person who owns multiple businesses, I get it now. Listen, I'm trying to start another business in town. I've found a property I want. At the moment, it's. Did we show you? Did we walk past it yesterday? The glass fronted build. So when you came out of my bar and you went down to the road, you took a right to get to the main high street. Did you see the big face statues?
I don't think so.
Do you even remember getting home?
It was like 4 glasses of wine at that point.
It was more than that. Anyway,
I do remember, but I don't remember the face statues.
That's the main high street of Bedford, right? And my bar's just off Mill Street, which intersects it. On that corner, there's a glass-fronted building that wraps around it. It's a beautiful spot to put a nice business in my hometown. In a town where the high street's dying, there's an application at the moment for a slots company. Like we call them fruit machines. You call them one-arm bandits. Like in Vegas.
Oh, slot machine.
Slot machines, right? For one of those on that corner.
Yeah.
That to me is a signal of the decay of
for sure.
of society, because it's and I've got no issue with gambling.
For sure.
I like gambling, but I don't want that to be there.
Yes.
That to me should be a beautiful cafe or a restaurant or something nice where people come and meet their friends, not where they degenerates go and fucking throw their money away.
Right.
So anyway, it exists, right? Yeah. They've got an application in. They might get it, they might not. Connor and I went to see the owner. I said, look, I want the lease. How do I get it? And she's, well, you can get it, but you got to be quick. And so I was like, give me 48 hours. I'm going to run the business budget. So I'm doing my budget. But in there, I'm like, business rates, taxation, which is a lot of money. Okay. VAT on everything I sell, because it's like VAT in business is generally fine if you've got no retail customers, because you're just passing on costs. When you've got retail customers, It's just something that comes off the top line.
Right.
And so I'm going through it all, and I'm like, the difference between this being a comfortable, easy business and this being a break-even business is all my taxation, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I can actually even create this business is because I've got the free capital to do it. But that didn't come from all my other businesses. Let's be realistic. It came from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because I bought and held Bitcoin. I now have the money to do it because I had something that retained wealth and actually grew in value.
Yeah.
And so like I'm seeing it in real time. I'm seeing the taxation and the bureaucracy, which is stopping me create business, and then the Bitcoin, which is helping me create business. What you're talking about, that pouring into a new, I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
But if we had my two best friends here, they were like, you guys sound like nutcases. Which is the branding and marketing problem.
Yeah, branding and marketing. Well, I mean, what can we do about that? It's just education, right? Education, and then the other factor is pain, right? Like your two friends, eventually they'll realize the scam is going to get bad enough, and they'll see you continue to succeed in the way you just described, and at some point, they're going to start to emulate your strategy, right? Once the pain is bad enough, people start to change. So
when it gets like Argentina, they will know.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, right? And this is kind of a brutal irony about Bitcoin. As a Bitcoin educator, as you are, right? We spend a lot of time trying to share this message, right? The importance of property, the importance of freedom, the problems with statism. But you know what? Maybe 1-2% of people really listen to that and think and learn from the pain of others, right? It's much more cost effective to learn from the pain of others by studying history. But the other 98%, they need to touch that hot stove. They need to feel the pain before they really start to move. Well, so the brutal irony is, I think in the end, in the final analysis, the state is going to orange pill more people by far than anyone else.
The biggest problem in it is...
it won't be the orange pill. It'll be the orange suppository, as Knut said. If you don't voluntarily take the orange pill, then you'll involuntarily later take the orange suppository.
I like that a lot. Go on, Knut. So the biggest problem we face with this is that we try and tell people, here is a solution to the problems. Yep. This is technology, a monetary technology that we've studied, and we think this is a solution. But most of the people that we're trying to reach think the solution is moving their vote from here to here.
I know. Yeah.
And even in Argentina, which I've been to, and I made a documentary and I've met everyone, there are a handful of people who think that Bitcoin is a solution, and the vast majority of people think it's a political solution.
That's right.
Whether it's Millet or somebody else, they still think it's a political solution. I still think it can be. I think it has to be a Bitcoin and a political solution.
May I quote some lyrics from one of my favorite songs?
Go on.
The opening lyrics to the song by The Police, "We Are Spirits in the Material World," says, "There is no political solution to our troubled evolution. Have no faith in Constitution. There is no bloody revolution." So while I would agree with you, there has to be a political element to the solution, because basically everything humans do is political in nature, if you define politics that way. I don't think, like, every time you have a bloody revolution, right, you basically create a power vacuum on top of this political hierarchy, and it gets filled by someone else, right? Whether it's a democratic body, whether it's an authoritarian, it's someone else trying to get close to that spigot of stolen proceeds. And so that cycle doesn't ever end, right? You have to actually remove the spigot itself, or at least shrink it. And so that's what I think the solution is, right? So Bitcoin is like a bloodless revolution, right? We've actually we're turning off the valve, if you will. There's all this fountain of stolen proceeds flowing through the central bank and through the state, and you have all these unscrupulous people kind of scurrying to the top of that hierarchy, right, to get a piece of the action. Well, Bitcoin's just like turning the valve down. So the fountain's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So there's less incentive for people to politic, more incentive for people to produce.
Yeah,
I think that's the only solution, right? I don't think you can't just internally in this hierarchy shuffle new people around or restructure it. Like the theft is the root of the problem.
Yes, but let me add 2 points, because I think I'm agreeing with you mostly. Because I think I think the fundamental agreement is we need a change to the incentive structure, and the root problem in the incentive structure is fixed around the money.
Yes, and just what you said earlier, like we were saying Bitcoin's a solution. We're basically just saying people keeping what they earn is the solution.
Yes, but I don't think it will play out exactly like that. So I think firstly, I think Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, but I think it will be also bloody in that at some point there will be a dramatic shift in the economy. If mathematically we're all going to head to hyperinflation and we're going to transition to Bitcoin, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be winners and losers.
Hyperinflations are bloody.
Hyperinflations are bloody. But so that transition itself with Bitcoin as a tool will be difficult. But that's by the by. There was a thing we talked about at dinner last night, whereas I think Bitcoin improves the incentive structures, but I don't think it gets rid of politics.
I agree.
I think this
Localizes politics,
which is what I want. Everything I'm doing in Bedford, whilst I always get thrown the status insult at me, I just want to reiterate I was a reluctant statist, and if I wanted to explain it in a more clear way, I think the state is a natural monopoly. I think we will always have the state, whether it's, I have a state in my house, and I'm the tyrannical dictator.
You have a hierarchy.
Yeah.
You don't have a state. You're not stealing from people in your house.
I am. I'm stealing from my kids sometimes. Yeah, take their shit.
You should probably see a psychiatrist about that.
I take their shit off them. If they misbehave, I take their phone off them.
I would bet that the net balance is you've given to them more than you've taken.
Yeah, but I'll take their phone off them if they've misbehaved. But even locally, right? Yeah. I want things to happen in my town.
Right.
I have to make moves, right, to do that. And even if you get rid of the state, I think the state reforms, because I think the state is generally about one thing in its root. I think the root of a state is safety and security.
Life, liberty, and property.
But I think it's about safety and security. That's what because what will happen is if you
say safety and security, is that synonymous with life, liberty, and property?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is if you get rid of it, people are going to suddenly feel nervous, and they're going to band together to organize things. Sure. And they're going to create structures and hierarchies. So you get rid of the state rebuilds itself. And you might rebuild it worse than you have it now. But so when I say that I think part of the answer, I think Bitcoin is a tool, I think there's a political answer. My belief is that the state is a natural monopoly, will always exist. That's why we have 200 governments around the world. Everywhere there's an area of land that they can control, they create a state, and they govern that state. I think that's always going to continue. That will always be a way. So my view on politics is that I want there to be a political answer to make things just less shit. And this is why I 100% entirely agree with every single libertarian I've ever met. Their entire thesis on the world, what they want, I completely agree. But my question is, why haven't you got there? So I want libertarians to be more political, and I want them to just have one goal. And it takes me all the way back to my interview with Eric Voorhees I did years ago. He said, let's just make the state smaller. I just want libertarians to be political, and their one objective is to influence government to be smaller. Less spending, less tax.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Yes. That is the answer. It's the same answer we just touched on. Okay, so the state as a protection racket, right? I'll remove the word racket. A protection producing service. In that sense, a state, which I would really I try to separate state and government, actually. So state is someone that's negotiating with you, not negotiating with you, basically just telling you, this is your rate, we're going to take it. Like we have the exit tax in the US. You can't leave with $2 million. You can't say, hey, US, I don't like the deal here. You're taxing me too much, not giving me enough service. I'm going to exit. Like, oh, not until you give us X% of everything over $2 million, right? So like that's theft. But government, like rules, protection, something that you can opt in and opt out of, like that makes sense. We need that. But it should be a local affair, right? The more centralized it is, you just become a row on a spreadsheet to some bureaucrat thousands of miles away. Whereas if it's a local affair, you have more ability to either enter politics, the political domain to influence, or you probably interact with the guy, right? It's a face-to-face affair rather than you being a row on the spreadsheet. On this topic, you got to read, I've mentioned this to you already, the book Bitcoin is Venice.
Yes.
It is the best Bitcoin rabbit hole book written yet.
Danny, right now, as you say this, and he's listening back, we wish you were here with us, Danny. It's weird not having you here. He's right now going to be wetting his pants going, yes, I'm fucking telling you, Pete.
Yeah.
He's like, to me, Bitcoin is Venice is the best writings book on Bitcoin.
And the reason I bring it up here is because it expands on this very topic, right?
Yeah.
It's like we want localism in government.
Yes.
We don't want globalism, right? That's a real problem. And so it goes through how Bitcoin will influence the world in that direction, sort of tilts us back towards localism, and then also describes why that's good in a very detailed manner. So it's a fucking amazing book, but that particular point is explained really well. Also, you should have, I cannot pronounce his last name. He's been on my show twice now. Rahim. His last name starts with a T. I can share his profile with you. It's a very complicated last name. He's the last Austrian economist in Austria, and he's a student of Hoppe. And he was on the show recently talking about, Austrian business cycle theory.
Yep.
He has
Sorry, I just nodding agree. Explain to me.
So Austrian business cycle theory is like once you start to debase money, you misallocate capital.
Okay.
You exacerbate the boom and bust business cycle. And every time there's a bust, you need to print more money. You misallocate more capital. So it's the booms and the busts.
What we're literally living through right now.
So 2008, we print $700 billion, right?
It felt like a lot of money then.
That was a lot of money.
Didn't they print that last week?
2020?
Yeah.
We print 6 to 8 trillion, right? We 10x. So that's kind of Austrian business cycle in action. That every time there's a bust, it's exponentially larger, so they print exponentially more money. You misallocate exponentially more capital, and the cycle repeats. So Rahim has an analogous theory that he calls it's a theory of violence cycles. So just like we talk about goods being traded in the marketplace, we can also trade bads, which is basically the threat, right? There's a threat that if you don't do what I say, I'm going to take your shit. And now a lot of times people just comply with that, right? Like you pay your property tax. You don't go to the government and be like, come and take it, motherfucker. Like you just pay the tax and you comply. You don't test the credibility of that threat. But occasionally, if the taxation or the threat or the theft gets too high, people will actually test the credibility of that threat. So Can
I give you a real example of that?
Please.
Yeah, so that's literally happening right now in Argentina. I saw it in action. There's 2 economies in Argentina now. Okay, there's the economy and the real economy. There were places we would go to and they would give us, do you remember this, Kurt? They would give us 2 bills. You can pay in the peso or you can pay in the dollar, and it was a different price. Okay, and they want the dollars because they're outside of the Argentinian economy, and I know they're not paying their taxation and they don't care. They've just said, I cannot fucking do business here anymore. Right. If I use the peso, it's debasing so quickly. Yeah. I cannot buy my goods and reprice at the rates you have to. Just give me dollars. And people are literally just building their own economy. Yeah. The same in Lebanon. Yeah. Both those countries, they've gone, fuck it, we'll test it. And they're doing it.
Yeah.
So it is happening. But it has to get fucking extreme for that.
Absolutely, it does. And so you should have him on the show. It's kind of the point. There's another side to economics, right? It's not just the trading of goods and services, free market, voluntary. Like this is probably a problem a lot of people have. Libertarians, they take this sort of narrow view on the world. I wouldn't say they actually do, but it's perceived that libertarians take this narrow view on the world, that we're all just peaceful and we should all just cooperate. That's actually rationally a good thing, but the real world actually has coercion, physical power, things like this. There's a way to economically analyze the trading of bads, just like there is the trading of goods. And the other thing I wanted to say about that is the reason it's rational, right? Obviously, it's kind of a moral argument. Hey, let's stop stealing from each other, right? That would be nice. No one likes getting looted. But there's a very pragmatic economic argument as well, which is every hour a human spends stealing from another human is an hour they did not spend producing something, right? So it's an axiom that theft reduces productivity, right? It's intuitive. Like, how could it be anything else? If the guy's stealing and not producing, then he's not producing. So productivity go down with every act of theft. Further, the guy that gets robbed is disincentivized from producing because he can't keep what he made, right? There's at least the possibility of loss, but in the case of taxation and inflation, it's almost the inevitable loss, right? You've created something, you've created fruits of labor, and part of it is going away. That's whatever that percentage is a disincentive for you to be productive.
And there's missed opportunity cost. Now, I am taking my spare capital. Look, I'm a good businessman. That's one thing I know I'm good at. I create profitable businesses that work. I've done it my whole adult life. And I want to create more of them. I'm addicted to business. I just am. I just have to create more businesses. I go into my town center and I see opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. All these closed shops, I think you could do this with it. You could do that with it. And I want to do it. So I take my free capital and I do it. I bought that bar. It's still successful. It's making more money than it was last year. I built a football club. It's making money. I want to do this other place that I told you about. I can see opportunity. But I'm using my free capital after all the tax I paid. My corporation tax in my business, which is at 29%, I think it is. My personal tax that I'm paying. If I paid less tax, and I'm not anti-tax, but I would have more money to create more businesses for productive people.
Yeah.
But what I have to do is I have to fund the unproductive people.
That's right. Yeah, you're getting looted. And as addicted to business as you are and as successful as you've been, you'd probably be more addicted and more successful if you weren't being looted quite so much.
I could do a lot more.
Yeah. And then again, to make this a little more real, right? And I've wrote about this in Masters and Slaves of Money. Central banking is an institutionalized system of time theft because ultimately the fruits of your labor are a product of your time or energy, right? Time and energy used synonymously here. We printed $6 trillion in 2020, right, in the U.S. The average annual U.S. salary is $60,000, roughly. That's 100 million years stolen, right, through the counterfeiting of currency. If each human works from the age of 20 to 70, so that's about 50 productive years per human, the counterfeiting of $6 trillion USD equals the stealing of 2 million human lives worth of productive labor. Right? This is to try to make it real, like it's a real massive problem. And then of course the plausible deniability that's built into inflation, right? It's Putin's fault. It's Beyonce's fault. It's the supply chains. It's everything but the central bank. So again, we're back to that romantic lie, the deception and the stealing going hand in hand. I think this is hopefully what we can deliver as Bitcoiners is pulling back the veil on this bullshit and saying, look, you don't need to steal from people to make society work. Let people opt in and opt out.
Well, hold on, but you say that you, with the idea that you think these people making these decisions want society to work. And
that's true.
You've got to have the right people.
The constituents of society that are being robbed probably want it to continue to work. And this is all, we all benefit from the division of labor, even the people that are doing the stealing. So I think it's myopic, like the people that are benefiting from the theft, right? They obviously have a very large short run gain. But if they're destroying society in the process,
it's evil.
It's fucking evil. But if we're just making the practical argument against it, what Rothbard says this really well, right? He says basically the looters are predators, right? They're destroying all of the livestock eventually, and at some point the parasite has nothing to eat. And so there's this myopic view that it needs to fund itself in the short run through theft or whatever, taxation and inflation. But in the long run, you're actually decreasing productivity. You're decreasing the economic surplus that you can harvest. You're incentivizing people to not be productive. And this, again, I mentioned, I think to you offline, we just released the money speech on the channel, which is me reading like a 15-minute excerpt from the book Atlas Shrugged. It's the best description of money I've ever heard, right? It's brilliant.
We will listen to it on the way to football.
It's fucking phenomenal. She talks about this, right? When you see that people start to attack money, like you'll know that your society is doomed for this reason. Like it's tilting that incentive landscape just away from production towards coercion, theft, and violence. And it what does she say? That when reason fails to be the standard by which men interact and force becomes the standard, then the murderer wins over the pickpocket, and that society vanishes in a spread of ruins and slaughter. So it's like you have to stop stealing so we can maintain the economic division of labor that benefits all of us, right? That all these things that we can just order online and they magically appear, well, that shit's not going to work if we keep going down this path.
It's really interesting locally here. I always refer back to Bedford because, again, this is localism. What I'm trying to do, look, we talked about this in the car. I can move to anywhere in the world. I could move to Los Angeles or New York or London and get in the mix there. But like, what? You can't make any change. You can make change here. I believe Bedford can be an example to Bitcoiners of what you can do locally in your town by creating a thing, like creating a project, creating a flag, right? And I've started to have interactions now with the mayor of the town and the council. And it's really interesting because I see everything. Yeah, it's like when you see into the Matrix, right? You suddenly, Neo, you see the code. The people themselves are brilliant. Like all of them, every one of them, I believe fundamentally their heart is in the right place, where I don't believe members of parliament are. I think members of parliament are the people who are causing the main issues. But the local councillors and the local mayor, even if some of them aren't the most competent, they all definitely want to make Bedford a better place. Everything they're doing day in, day out is to try and help and support the people of Bedford. But I'm also seeing the bureaucracy. Like the planning departments, when you want to get anything done. Like even in my bar, if I want to put any fixed structure in or move any fixed structure, I have to go through planning to do it. For our football ground, I want to build a new football stadium here. My brother's pre-warning me. It's 3 years probably of planning to get shit done.
Wow.
So I'm seeing all sides of it. And I'm like, how do we break this? How do we change this? Because all I know is I'm productive. I want to create more productive people. I want to employ productive people. And there's all these fucking barriers in the way, like constantly.
Yeah, I guess people would criticize me or Bitcoiners in general for overly simplifying this and saying, change the incentives, change the world, right?
It is more complicated than that. I'm seeing it.
What you're describing, that's an incentive problem. What are those planning requirements from? Are those Bedford requirements or these state requirements? Like, what are they?
Do you know what? I don't know exactly because my brother's the one who deals with them.
Yeah.
I think it's probably both.
Yeah.
I think it's,
So,
there's little things like this house. I'll give you the funniest one about this house. This one killed me. The house, this is a new built house, and there were all these regulations. One of them is the house had to have a wheelchair ramp at the front of the house, right? Had to have it to get signed off.
really?
Yeah, I was like, but there's no one in a wheelchair in my house. And it's a gravel driveway. It had to have it. But as soon as I moved in, I can take it away because it's my house.
So you had to put it in before you moved in, and then you can.
Yeah.
It's
How fucking
nonsense.
It's nonsense, isn't
Right.
it? It's nonsense. Why isn't somebody there going, yeah, this is absolute
So that's
nonsense.
taken away from your productivity.
Yeah.
Obviously having to do that shit. And then imagine the productivity that's wasted writing stupid fucking laws like that.
But there is a flip side to this. I believe building regulations are important.
Sure. And you could opt into a governance structure that has certain building regulations that you agree with.
But I think there needs to be a criminality to
That's fine.
to
As long as you can opt out of it.
opt out of.
If you don't like the building regulations in the jurisdiction you live in, you should be able to leave that jurisdiction and
Yeah,
go to
leave
another
the
one.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But and the reason there's a really good example in China, I can't remember the region. There was an earthquake. Loads of the buildings collapsed because they were built without. I don't know if they didn't follow regulation. You can search this up. Ai Weiwei did art installation based on it. He went to the region. They went and got all the steel girders and they took them back and they made an installation. They put it in London. I saw it, and because people ignored the regulations, right, and people died.
Yeah.
And so, like, I believe there should be regulations about
Right.
buildings that stop people dying, right?
Yes.
But I think having a wheelchair ramp by force on a house which can be taken away is absolute fucking nonsense.
Yes.
What's the point
Right.
of that?
Right.
What a waste. Someone's had to build that,
Yeah.
install it, pay for it,
Yeah.
and then someone's had to pay to take it away.
Yes. I mean, there's a libertarian answer to this. I'd point to The Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard, but I think he would say something like, if you build a building and it collapses and people die or get hurt or their property is damaged, then those people can then sue the person that built that building. The threat of lawsuit would basically force the builder to impute that into their cost structure, right? So that would incentivize them to build buildings according to standards and design principles that made it last for a long time.
Yeah, I just don't think that would happen though.
I mean, why wouldn't it? There's an incentive to do it.
But there's an incentive to do it now.
Well, there's an incentive to do it now. I don't know what's going on in China, clearly.
But the incentive to do it now is that it will not get signed off if you haven't followed the regulations,
yes,
so you can't sell it.
I guess I would say there's a less expensive way to do it. You don't need to jump through all of these arbitrary technical hoops when you could just have the matter settled by the threat of litigation. Like if someone can just sue you if the thing doesn't work, then that should be enough of an incentive to get people to build sound structures.
But it won't be. You know, people will go, yeah, but fuck it, I don't care. I'll take the risk. It's like fire risk. We have to have fire safety checks, and you have to have certain sprinkler systems. You have to have certain amount of exits with the amount of people in the building. Again, we know what happens to buildings where people don't follow those. There's fires and people die.
Yeah.
And so this is where I struggle with the no governance. I always
It's not
think
no
there will be-
governance, though. It's not no governance.
But I always think that like what I mean is that I think the state is a natural monopoly. I think it will always exist, and there's certain things I think it does well. There's certain things it's just not a lot, but there's certain things it does well.
Yeah, I guess the real gripe would be against fiat legislation.
Yeah.
You know the
That one we can agree on.
Here's the ultimate answer, though. I don't know. That's the answer. You don't know. That's the answer. What do we need? We need experimentation, trial and error. We need like entrepreneurial statism, right?
Yeah.
Small local governments trying different things, people opting into the ones that work, opting out of the ones that don't work, and then let it self-organize.
Sounds like federalism,
Something like that.
which we don't have here, unfortunately. That's one of the biggest problems here. Is there's zero the only opt out is leave the country.
Yeah.
We don't have the opt out where you can leave the county,
Right.
Because it's pretty much the same fucking rules everywhere.
Right.
The taxation is certainly the same.
Yeah.
Whereas you have different options, like you can live in California and pay a high income tax,
Yeah.
or you can live in Austin and pay a high property tax. You pick your poison.
Yeah. I would bet my ass your wheelchair requirement was from central London, not from Bedford.
Almost certainly. But like again, that's from good intentions gone wrong. I also like the fact
well, the
that
path to hell is paved with good intentions.
well, I like the fact that new buildings have to have considerations for people.
No,
in a
I agree with
wheelchair.
that too.
But
that's something I would opt into.
Yeah, but it's legislated for here. You cannot build commercial buildings, retails without facilities for people in wheelchairs. I think that's fucking great. And I know people go, yeah, but the libertarian argument is someone will choose to do it because if they choose to do it, then they will have the customers who are in wheelchairs. There's no economic reason to do it.
Well, look, that's something I would opt into. But maybe someone else wants to opt into a place where no one lives in wheelchairs, right? And people should be free to do that.
Yeah. I guess
And
it's
you can opt into anything, right? This place is all women. This place is all men. This whatever the thing is, like let people do what they want.
I guess that's we're in that kind of like individualism versus collectivism ideas.
Yeah, you know the way I look at it, it's like it's just a club we're all subscribing to, right? Whatever state you're in, and you should just be able to go take your business elsewhere if you don't like it.
Yeah.
But these clubs, because it's a monopoly on violence, right? Very hard to negotiate with a monopoly at all, especially the one on violence. So they tend to set prices rather than negotiate them. And Bitcoin increases the negotiating leverage of the individual against the collective.
I was meant to ask you earlier. I think I tried and you didn't answer. Do you pay tax?
Of course I pay tax.
Slave.
Partial slave.
Partial slave.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
I can't believe you're a slave. I don't pay tax. I'm not a slave. I avoid it.
Well,
Come
there's
at me,
not
bro.
a binary, though. This is
know.
where I think we get caught
I'm
up.
just teasing you.
0% effective tax rate makes you a sovereign.
Yes.
100% effective tax rate makes you a slave. Pick your percentage. So it's a continuum, not a binary.
Have you interviewed Dominic Frisby?
Yes.
Great guy, yeah?
Whole series, yeah.
Do you know what? We should
Actually,
have
I got a quote from him on here.
we should have got together with him, actually. I should have got him down.
Yeah.
He
I
said
actually
to
forgot
me,
to tell him I was in London.
he said to me, 15% is about, he said that's a good number.
So here's a Dominic Frisby quote, actually. Slavery in which you have no ownership of your labor and indeed your entire self is in many ways the ultimate form of taxation. That's what it is. I mean, that's, again, you don't own a slave to own the slave. It's for their labor, right? And if taxation is a violation of private property, I don't know if you agree with that, actually. Taxation is theft. I don't know where you stand on that.
It's a weird one because yes, it is, because I produce and it's taken from me with it's not the threat of guns, it's the threat of knives here, and it's present. Like I get that argument, but again, I'm also like, state is a natural monopoly, it's going to exist. There's certain things I'm happy to pay for, and so like I'm okay with taxation, but I think it's too high. Dominic Frisby said to me 15%. He's not anti-tax.
Yeah.
He said he understands why tax exists. I'm happy to pay 15% tax to have my bins collected.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pay 15% tax to have our borders protected. I'm happy to pay 15% tax to have building regulations and stop people crushing things. What I don't want to do is pay 50% tax to have this huge bureaucracy that interferes with everything I do, or I can't get shit done. Like none of it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense. You know, I want to sit down with these people and say, look, I'm a businessman. This is how hard you are making it for me to do business.
Yes.
If you get out my fucking way, I can create more business and more businesses. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. So taxation is theft by definition, but I'm okay with a small amount of tax.
Right. So the ability to say no, right? The ability to opt out, the ability to go somewhere else, which technically you can, right? You can leave the UK and you can go somewhere else.
I always think it's a weak argument because most people can't. And most people don't want to. Let me give you a better example of why I think it's a weak argument. In Argentina, right?
I'm not making this argument, by the way.
No, other people do.
Right.
But like in Argentina and Lebanon, what stood out is there's a brain drain. Young people are leaving the country. They're moving to England, America, Australia, because they can't get jobs. If they can't make any money. They can't buy a property. There's no future. There's no hope. So they're leaving the country. But these are people who their culture's built around the family, about being together. So it's like a horrific thing to see. Their children are moving away. They don't want this. And so I don't think people want that option to leave I'll leave the country, because it's like you have to leave. I want to be in Bedford. I want to be around my people and my friends and my family. Sure. So I that's not the opt-out I want. I want the localism opt-out.
Yeah.
You know, I want county by county. Yeah. Say Hertfordshire had lower tax. I could go there.
Right.
I'm still a 20-minute drive from Bedford.
Right.
Give me that option.
Right.
Make these places compete for my income, my business, and I'm cool with that.
I think we're saying the same thing, right?
So.
It's the state needs to behave more like other market actors and just have to compete for your business and be accountable to your preferences. Whereas when a central state has a money printer, they don't need to listen to you. It doesn't matter what you say, right? Your preferences are basically ignorable. And Bitcoin fixes this.
You've ended that perfectly on 1 hour, and we're going to go to watch some football now. Your first time.
That was 1 hour.
That was 1 hour.
Like 15 minutes.
It was 1 hour and 10 minutes, but I forgot to press record for the first 10 minutes.
Oh, that's right.
Fucking idiot. You ready for some football?
I'm ready.
Let's do it, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Man, anytime.